So, I mean, it's just become this special interest free fall.
Friedberg, we talked about not having a wartime stance with the pandemic. We don't have a wartime stance with global warming or extreme weather, whichever term you want, should we?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're burning money at like a drunken sailor.
What's going on right now, and actually a lot of what we're going to talk about at this symposium over the next day or so, is that there is effectively now a raging free market appetite for these solutions. The capital is pouring in. The entrepreneurship is blossoming, ballooning. The technology is advancing. So, to some degree, folks might say, this is going to get solved. But there are major infrastructure solutions that are needed for us to accelerate the outcome and win the war. And those infrastructure solutions aren't going to get funded by SoftBank, and they're not going to get funded by Chamath. They're going to need to get funded by the type of dollars. I mean, you keep building your book like you are, you will fund them in the next decade. But Sacks, kind of speaks to the kind of numbers that I think, are necessary here. I mean, you think about how much money we spent on COVID without any results over the last year. It really begs the question, if we were kind of to take an ROI-based approach to where are we spending these dollars, this would probably be the first on the list. And by the way, the private market and jobs will benefit. And what happened in this bill, this infrastructure bill this past year, that's now been more kind of definitively drafted, is a bunch of infrastructure jobs that are basically giveaways. They're not actually solving problems with climate change. They're not pushing technology forward. They're not creating these alternatives that we're talking about. They create 10x and 100x outcomes. They are yesteryear's solutions. And they're not going to move the needle enough. And so, look, I do think it's unfortunate, but the Climate Change War Production Board is needed to kind of get the kind of dollars motivated that are needed to create the kind of infrastructure to solve these problems, despite the free market appetite. And the free market appetite, by the way, fuels the outcomes, but it still needs something behind it.
Chamath, is it possible, just as we're having this discussion here, we're looking at an incompetent, corrupt government that is filled with grifters who are bought and sold, and then on the other side, and causing massive problems.
That's a mouthful. I wouldn't say that people. I disagree that people are corrupt and grifters. I do think that I do think that there's a lot of good motivations. I just think that the system,
government,
there may be corruption, but I don't think that that's the universal truth, right? People are generally good. We've all met politicians, right? We've all met people.
Which one is it?
It's a point of perspective, right? And there's
what's your perspective?
My perspective is that they're all being told by their constituents what they want, and then they're doing it,
or by lobbyists,
but at the end of the day,
to listen to lobbyists?
At the end of the day, the way that the system is set up is people get reelected by doing what the people that are going to vote and put the dollars and put the votes out for them are asking them to do, and that's the way that this has kind of resolved itself.
So,
and by the way, when wars happen, when a war happened in the 20th century, that wasn't the driving force. The driving force was existential, and it was we have to win the war. And that really needs to be the mindset we all need to adopt today, which is an existential mindset. We need to win the war, and it can't be about what my constituents are telling me and what the lobbyists are telling me.
So, despite this either incompetence, graft, or if you're more charitable, it's a complex problem to solve. Despite all of that, we have massive entrepreneurship in the country. We have massive capital allocation at an extreme violent rate. In fact, a lot of that money is coming from all this money being pumped into the system. So in a way, do you think the only solution we have, Chamath, is entrepreneurs in startups who are getting large amounts of money to solve these problems? Because it's not going to happen by government, obviously.
We have a ton of great entrepreneurs, and I think that we're doing things. Okay, so this is. If you look at the internet, in the 20 years that we've been grinding in the internet, we've had an incredible tailwind that helped us, which is all these people, much like the folks in this room, but in different companies 10 or 20 years earlier than you are now, abstracting parts of the stack so that the rest of us could use it, right? And so, I remember 2006, we were racking and stacking servers at Facebook in Santa Clara. Me, Adam D'Angelo, and I was like, what the fuck are we doing? And I remember in 2008, when Adam D'Angelo, he was our CTO at the time, left, he started a company called Quora. D'Angelo's like, I'm building on AWS. And I thought he was a fucking idiot. I thought, who builds on AWS? You build your own data centers. Now, if you said that to somebody, you would be the idiot, right? So if it's that, or if it's the tooling and the tool chains that we've been able to build on top of, all of that abstraction and simplification has allowed an order, or frankly, probably even maybe 2 orders of magnitude of entrepreneurship to come. That's also now happening in biotech. So all of that is an incredible progress. The problem now is we used to be a part of the economy that was an afterthought. We were over here. Politicians didn't need to understand. They didn't need to take the time. Their first reaction is denial, because it basically pushes up against power, and that really freaks them out. But now we're at a point where we are so integral, they need to understand it better. Here's a perfect example. Last week, Illumina's patents expired. So if you're in the business of healthcare, and if you're in the business of CRISPR, gene therapy, any of the stuff that actually a lot of you guys are involved in, you would love for the fact that, next gen sequencing could have 1,000 flowers bloom, 90 different methods. The cost of a sequence goes down to a penny. It's not possible today because you have to go through one methodology. You have one company to work through. You have one set of reagents, or a set of reagents that one company sells, and it's basically cordoned off. That can't change because of technology, because they can then sue you, go to courts, and they win. And so this is where you have to interface with the government, and they just need to get smarter. Because otherwise, there's only so much innovation we can do before their historical legacy things like patents and IP come and bite you in the ass.
Sacks, what do you think? Is entrepreneurship alone and capital allocation by aggressive, thoughtful and bold capital allocators enough to solve the incompetence in Washington or the graft?
Well, it's going to have to be. And here's the good news, bad news. Okay, I had a tweet that kind of went viral. So when Afghanistan happened, we spent $2 trillion, 2,500 American casualties, 40,000 wounded. And what have we gotten out of it? The Chinese are about to take up residence in Bagram, in our splendid Air Force base. And the Taliban are one of the best equipped armies in the world. That's basically what our $2 trillion got us.
And China's going to build a superhighway.
Right.
By the way, sorry,
they're going to extract all
did you see the thing where the Taliban were flying around in our helicopters?
How
did they learn to fly our helicopters?
No, it was fake apparently.
Yeah, it was fake news.
Fake news.
Oh,
fake
God.
news.
Don't spread it. Don't spread
They do have more
I
Black
had fake
Hawks
moral
now.
outrage then.
Apparently, the helicopters that were left behind are non-functional. So let's just clear that up.
That's not true.
Yeah,
They have more Black Hawks than any other army in the world except for us. Haven't you seen all the photos of them? They're all decked out in our uniforms. It's incredible.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They got our night vision goggles and the whole
photos
thing.
on the internet.
No. There was reporting itemizing the inventory, the cache of weapons we left behind. It was gigantic.
All right, let's
It's
get
a
to the question
huge
now.
problem.
The good news, bad news.
Okay,
Keep
so
going.
that's the bad news. That's what $2 trillion of government spending got us. The good news is I went back and I looked at how much money has been invested in the venture capital space over that same 20-year period that we were in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And it roughly tallied up to about $2 trillion. I didn't know that, actually. I added up the chart. And most of it was in the last 5 years, because there's actually been a huge acceleration in the amount of money coming into VC over the last several years, the SoftBanks, the Tigers, and so that you've had these
late-stage funds.
the mega late-stage funds. So the truth is, for really way less than, I'd say, $1 trillion of early stage, like true venture money, we've been able to create the entire technology ecosystem as we see it today. Not entire, I guess you go back 20 years, there's 5 years in the late 90s. So the private enterprise system has accomplished so much with relatively so little money. You compare the efficiency of it, you almost wonder, how did we squander so much money in Afghanistan?
How is it possible?
It took active looting by many different forces to basically squander. Think about
They literally had to burn money.
Every venture-backed company
Google,
at every
Facebook,
stage
Tesla,
in the last 20 years.
Uber, Airbnb.
That's how much money we spent in Afghanistan. How much of that money went to line the pockets of private contractors and, warlords we were paying off? It was a giant kleptocracy. Okay. So, but the good news is, look what we got for that same amount of money here. And not just here, every private venture-backed company. So I do think we are capable of accomplishing great things, but with relatively small amounts of investment, and thank goodness for that, because that's the only thing that's producing anything in our society. But But I mean, it's true, right? But look at what Washington's about to do. They want to stomp on all this innovation. I mean, they want to jack up the cap gains rate to higher than ordinary income. I mean, that is the return on investment for venture capital, for the kind of investment I'm talking about. I mean, they want to make it punitive. Now, that's not going to pass, thankfully, because we got Joe Manchin, but that's about it.
By the way, I will contradict myself and agree with Sacks. I do think there will be 100x, 1000x, 10,000x breakthrough that will resolve a lot of the challenges we face as a species on planet Earth over this century.
So we're optimistic.
And I'm 100% optimistic. I'm actually that's the title. You gave it away. The title of my talk in the morning, tomorrow morning. But I do. And by the way, my talk says absolutely nothing about the government. And we've been railing against the government. Now everyone's kind of feeling sad, and we sound like a bunch of old guys sitting at the Starbucks talking about the government, how they suck. But at the end of the day, I do think that the ingenuity of the human spirit and science will resolve the problems that we face today.
Jesus Christ!
And we are not going to end up. We're not going to end up depending on the government to solve the problem. So.
All right, I want to talk about one other.
By the way, we should kind of be mindful of the time.
I'm going to take questions from the audience. So if you have a question, I'm going to jump out there.
Should we do that now? Because we're kind of